Cinder's way, she speak with love, but don't sugarcoat what she say. She might be blunt. If you can hear me in the chat, give me a 2, and we are going to get started tonight. I won't hold you for too long. I want to thank everybody for joining me. Give this video a thumbs up and listen. You only get about 3 or 4 hypes every month. So do me a favor. It's either every month or every week. Don't quote me. I'm sorry. But can you spend one of your hypes on me? Okay. Hype this video. It gets it out to more people. And again, like this video, give it a thumbs up because it gets this video in rotation. You know we're going up against the algorithm. All right. Perfect, perfect, perfect. So we're gonna go deep tonight. What's happening, right? Actually, normally I would come and do this live, like privately, right? It's not something that, that I would share, but tonight I decided to go ahead and share with you guys. So if you're ready to get nerdy, give me a 2 again in the chat and we'll be hopping right into this. If you want to follow along, make sure you check the links in the description box below because I have the link to both of these blog posts that we will be going over today. So, again, if you want to follow along, then make sure you do that. So there is always debating going on social media, all of the places today, and moving forward, we won't be feeding into any of those things. If you hear topics that were maybe addressed previously, it's just coincidence, babe. I promise. I am completely focused on the science because I can only lead by example, and I want your focus to be on the science of the human body, nothing else. All right. So if you're ready to go and you're ready to stay focused on just that, pen and paper, let's get going. Right. So we are going to talk about the difference between petroleum and petroleum. Okay, petroleum jelly. We are going to talk about the difference because it is really, really, really confusing for a lot of people. We think that these are two of the same things and they are not. All right, so let's break down the hair grease myth and why your scalp was never designed to be covered in petroleum or anything for that matter. Do me a favor in the chat and type in nothing goes on the scalp but shampoo. Nothing but shampoo. Okay. So hopefully this is something that will stick with you after we have this conversation today because it's one of the things that I think confuses people the most. So separating science from tradition with evidence from dermatology, skin philosophy, and hair biology. If you want to look at these PDFs or any of these infographics up close, I really, really encourage you to head over to my website because it really, really, really gives you a good example or a really great visual on exactly what we're talking about today. Because it's one thing for me to say it, but it's another thing for me to show it to you. So I am trying to talk to everybody in their preferred love language in the way that you like to learn, right? Because for generations, many people have been taught that greasing the scalp is essential for healthy hair growth. All right. Heavy hair grease, typically formulated with petroleum jelly, mineral oil, and waxes, became a cultural staple long before we understood scalp biology. Now, that's something that I want everybody to really, really pay attention to. Yes, there were cases where our ancestors were doing certain things that they didn't understand, just like we're learning things for the first time now and making adjustments. There's no difference. Today, dermatology paints a much different picture. This article is not about demonizing hair grease. That's not what we're doing today, but it is about understanding what it actually does and what it doesn't do, and why petroleum are not the same thing, despite often being confused. Myth number one is that petroleum jelly and petroleum jelly are the same thing, but they are not. Again, if you want to see these infographics, make sure you head over. This is scientifically incorrect. Although the names sound similar, they refer to two very different materials, okay? And we'll get a glimpse of how it's made and the machine that it looks like in a second. Give me a two if you are still with me and if you can still hear me, okay? Because I really want you guys to get this. Normally, people are arguing about greasing the scalp and all of the things. We're not going to argue about that. And if you still want to grease the scalp after this, then you go right ahead. But I'm letting you know what you're actually doing and what you're not doing. Okay. So when we're talking about petroleum crude oil, this is an unrefined, naturally occurring mixture containing thousands of hydrocarbons, I'm sorry, plus sulfur compounds, nitrogen compounds, metal, and numerous impurities. It is the raw material removed from the earth. I will leave a link in the description box below because I have a full video on exactly how grease is made, how the gas is made, this whole entire process, right? But when we're talking about petroleum jelly, it is highly refined derivative produced during petroleum refining. During this process, impurities are removed, all right? And all of the other compounds that are negative, that negatively affect the body are removed for cosmetic and pharmaceutical grades, right? So it's really, really purified. And then the consistency becomes standardized. That's why it's all the same, because there's a certain process that is put through, and only selected high molecular weight hydrocarbons are going to remain after this process is complete. So think of it like this: petroleum equals crude oil, gasoline equals refined product, diesel equals the refined product. All right. So as you keep going on, these are the things that they are, and they're related, but they are not chemically identical. And this is a visual of exactly how everything's made and the difference between it. So again, anybody who tells you that petroleum and petroleum are the same thing, they are crazy. It is not the same thing in any way, shape, or form. It is, they go through similar processes. They start off as the same, but through this process, they come out all very different, right? So, what does petroleum actually do? This is where most misinformation begins, because it does not moisturize skin. But give me a three in the chat. Let's just be honest. Give me a three in the chat. How many people think that when you put Vaseline on, when you put petroleum jelly on, you are moisturizing your skin? Be honest. Just say yes. If you think that you're moisturizing your skin whenever you use petroleum jelly, whenever you use Vaseline, if you think that you're moisturizing your skin, just put yes in the chat. Don't be shy, baby. Don't be shy. And again, make sure you hype this video and give this video a thumbs up. So most people do think that whenever they are using Vaseline, they are moisturizing the skin, but that's not what is actually happening. It's not hydrating tissue, it's not nourishing follicles, it's not feeding the hair, it's not stimulating hair growth, and it's not replacing your natural sebum, your natural scalp oils. Instead, it functions almost entirely as an occlusive agent, right? That means that it creates a physical barrier over the skin. All it's doing is creating a barrier, but it doesn't actually get into anything, into a pore, anything, right? Dermatology lectures consistently describe Petroleum as a gold standard occlusive because it dramatically reduces this water loss within the body is known as TEWL. This is the normal evaporation of water from the skin, right? And studies estimate that it can reduce TEWL by more than 98%. But I need you to pay attention to something. Notice what that means. It keeps existing water from escaping. It's not creating or giving the body more water. It's not giving you more water that you didn't have before. It's just keeping the water that's already there from escaping. Those are two completely different things, right? So when we're talking about moisture versus occlusion, the words are often used interchangeably, but scientifically they are completely different words. Because when something contains moisture, when you're moisturizing something, water is inside of the skin. But when we're talking about hydration, the amount of water present without the outer skin layers. This is something that you really need to understand the difference between. And again, check the link in the description box below because I have a video on the topic where we go a little deeper into that when we're talking about the difference between the two. I know that could be a lot to suck in at first for some people, right? So make sure you check the video in the description box below, right? But again, when we're talking about hydration, we are talking about the amount of water present within the outer skin layers. And when we're talking about occlusion, when something is an active occlusion agent, it is creating a barrier that slows water evaporation. Petroleum performs only the third function. Imagine wrapping a plastic wrap around a damp sponge. The sponge doesn't gain water. It simply loses water slowly, a lot slower. The water is going to evaporate a lot slower because it's wrapped in plastic. Give me a four if that makes sense. And that's exactly how petroleum works on the skin. Just like you wrap in plastic wrap around a sponge, but you're not actually creating anything. And this is where things are going to get complicated because I have a question for you before we move along. This is not a rhetorical question. I need at least one of you to answer this. If you wrap a sponge, a wet sponge in plastic, right, and you leave it there for 3 days, and sometimes you may come back if you see it drying out a little bit and wet it again. What is the one thing that's there? It starts with the B. That's constantly growing. That's constantly growing uncontrollably. It's something that's alive and it starts with a B. What is going to be present on that sponge after it's in an occlusive state, like it's being kept wet? What's gonna happen? Yeah, thank you. Hold on. Yes, exactly. Bacteria. So I need you to keep this in mind as we move along because remember, we're talking about hair grease. And remember, we're talking about petroleum. And what does petroleum do? It creates an occlusive barrier, right? So if you have a wet scalp and you put an occlusive barrier on that wet scalp where the water can't escape, nothing can escape, what else can escape? Somebody type it in there for me again. Bacteria. This is something that's always going to be there. So let me know. Just give me a yes or a no. Don't say yes if you don't see it. But let me know of whether or not you are seeing how you could be the cause. But and we're not even halfway done. Well, we're halfway done. But let me know if you can see at this point of us talking about what occlusive means, right? And what creating a barrier means, what the petroleum is actually going to do. Let me know if you can see the parallel of how you could be causing your own yeast and bacterial infections on your scalp by using something that is meant to be occlusive. Let me know. Just a yes or a no, just a simple yes or no. And these are things that I want you to make sense of yourself. So many times you come across videos online and everybody wants to argue about if whether or not it's true or not. You don't have to do that. You have your own mind and your own intellect. And if we just really sit here and shoot the shit and really just think and talk scientifically and like just with your mind's eye have a regular conversation, these things make sense, right? Again, If you put something, if you putting on your skin is the equivalent to you wrapping a wet sponge in plastic. You are not getting more moisture. You're just not losing the water that you already had, or you're losing it slower. It's still going to leave, but it's going to evaporate slower. So, your scalp already has its own moisturizing system. The scalp is not dependent on grease in any way, shape, or form. It can become the habits that are formed can become habitual, but it is not needed. Grease is not something that is mandatory for the scalp. It's not, right? Because again, the scalp is not dependent on grease. Nature already solved that problem for you. Every healthy scalp contains sebaceous glands, and these are attached to hair follicles. These glands continuously produce sebum, and sebum is a very complex mixture of triglycerides, wax esters, squalene, cholesterol, and free fatty acids. And its job is to lubricate the scalp, reduce water loss, protect against environmental damage, and coat the hair shaft. This system has existed for millions of years. Your scalp was literally designed to oil itself. And the most complicated part about this whole conversation is you'll say this over and over again, but it's almost like there's some type of mental block where it's hard for anybody to accept the fact that they're created whole and that you don't need to add these additional things to your scalp. And it's something that I really want you to think about and ask yourself why, as a people, is this out of everybody on the planet, the only group of people that have an issue with length retention or scalp issues in that nature and all of the things are the group of people who won't stop oiling and greasing and putting extra things on the scalp, right? But moreover, you can do whatever you want to do. Let's keep moving so you can understand exactly what you're doing to your scalp when you're oiling and greasing it, whether you want to or not. So, why grease doesn't replace sebum? Sebum isn't just oil. It is a biologically active secretion specifically produced for human skin. Petroleum is simply an insert mixture of refined hydrocarbons. One is alive and one is manufactured. One interacts naturally with the skin's ecosystem, and the other one just sits directly on top of it. So let me know if that makes sense. I'm going to read it one more time because I really need you to understand the difference between the two. Again, you don't have to take anything that I'm saying as prayer book, but as you are making a decision to grease and oil your scalp, I need you to understand what you're doing. Okay? I'm going to read it one more time. It is a biological active secretion specifically produced for human skin. Petroleum is simply an insert mixture of refined hydrocarbons. One is alive, speaking of sebum, and one is manufactured, speaking of the grease and the butters that you're putting on your scalp. One interacts with the skin's ecosystem, which is sebum, which is produced in your body, and then the other one just sits directly on top of the skin. And this is why dermatologists classify petroleum as an occlusive protectant, not as a biological replacement for sebum. So if you're trying to do what sebum does to the scalp, you're not doing that by oiling and greasing the scalp. I don't care how great the grease is. I don't care how long your mother's been using it. You're not doing something better for the scalp than what the body's been engineered to do naturally. Give me a 3 in the chat if that makes sense. Because these are the things that confuse people so much. So, what happens when you coat the scalp? Once grease is applied, several different things occur. An artificial barrier forms. That's the first thing. So instead of allowing the scalp surface to remain open, petroleum coats the scalp. And this barrier is why the scalp often feels greasy for days. And number two is where we get to the real issue, right? Buildup begins to accumulate. Grease mixes with dead skin cells, remember how I told you the skin cell turnover cycle happens every 28 days, where the skin cells on your scalp, they die off and they're supposed to dry off and come out. And it's easy for them to come out, especially if you're combing your hair every day. Oh my God, it's so easy, right? But imagine if you have an occlusive layer of petroleum that you're putting on the scalp on a regular basis. All of the things that I'm about to name are getting trapped. If it makes sense, or when it begins to make sense, somebody please type trapped in the chat. Trapped in the chat. Okay. Grease mixes with dead skin cells, sweat, environmental debris, styling products, and natural sebum. And this creates a layer of residue that requires shampoo to remove. Grease itself isn't dirty, but it becomes an adhesive for everything else. So I'm gonna ask you something. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada, right? It's the dust bucket out here, right? Super dusty. We in the desert. So if I were to put Vaseline all over my legs and then petroleum jelly and then go outside, I am going to have every piece of tumbleweed, every rock, every pebble, every piece of dirt is going to stick to my legs. Let me know in the chat. Somebody talk to me. Like, if you cover yourself in petroleum jelly, isn't everything outside going to stick to you like glue, right? So if you know this, again, I'm not telling anybody what to do. If you know this, then what do you think is happening to your scalp? Why do you think your scalp is different from the rest of your body? These are the things that I want you to think about. So again, grease itself isn't dirty, but it becomes an adhesive for everything else. And three, natural sebum has to travel through that buildup. So when you go ahead and grease the scalp and all of the things stick to it, the sebum, the dead skin cells, all of the things, the the actual sebum that needs to get on the scalp and on the hair has to make it through the grease that you put on the scalp, on top of all of the dead skin cells and everything else that the grease has begun to attract. Sebum naturally moves from follicle along the hair shaft. Like, that's how it moves. Our God is perfect, made everything perfect, right? If you move with it right. Excuse me. Heavy residue can interfere with how evenly it spreads, contributing to the scalp that feels coated while the hair still feels dry. So it's more accurate to say grease can contribute to buildup around the follicle openings than to say that it universally blocks the pores. And this is what you guys have to understand. Whenever I say nothing goes on the scalp but shampoo, it is not because every individual product itself, oh, that's pore blocking. I need you all to understand the nuance of the situation. That's why I am a holistic practitioner. When I say holistic, that's not a fancy word. I'm saying that we're hitting things from every angle. We're looking at every angle, the whole sphere of things. Your diet, the way that you wear your hair, the products that you use, the things that you put on the scalp, as the frequency in which you remove things from the scalp, the frequency in which you cleanse, and all of the things. All of these things collectively go into with whether or not your scalp will be healthy. And these are things that you really have to think about. And in my opinion, we make things way more complicated than they need to be. And really quick, I am going to take a couple of questions, probably two. I'll allow two people to come up on stage and ask the question. So if you want to come up on stage, or if you want me to share the link, somebody just type the word link in the chat, and then I'll put the link up. If nobody puts the word link up, then we won't do all that. Okay. So, why does hair feel dry even when it's greasy? And this is one of the biggest misconceptions that we have. People often assume that hair feels dry, so you apply grease, and then hair feels softer. So, grease moisturizes the hair, but that's not really what happened. Instead, hair was already dry. Grease coated the outside, just the outside of the hair, and that coating, it reduced friction. So as a result, it made the hair feel softer. And this is not this is not an internal thing. The internal moisture content barrier, it changed. That's it. Only the barrier, nothing happened within. And this is why many people find themselves repeatedly reapplying grease without solving the underlying dryness. So, is this making sense, right? Give me a 2 in the chat if it's making sense, because these are the things that I really want you to understand. These are the things that we're constantly looking past. So, can grease clog hair follicles? This is the question that many, many people ask and are arguing with all the time. And the question requires nuance, right? Because current evidence does not support saying that petroleum itself universally clogs the follicles or pores. In fact, cosmetic grade petroleum is generally considered a non comedogenic on the face or skin. But I need you to remember this: when people use Vaseline or stuff like that on their skin, like I'm from Detroit, Michigan, and my grandma used to like layer me up with petroleum jelly before we walked outside, but that was to create a occlusive barrier because it was freezing cold outside. So the cold wouldn't hit my skin as fast because she put that barrier on my skin. Did she break that down scientifically? No, but now as a scientist, I understand that that was her intention. That's what she was doing, right? But my grandma, even though she reapplied it every day, I still wash my face multiple times in a day. So you cannot compare adding petroleum to the scalp to adding it to the face, because the face is washed and cleansed on a regular basis. So it never has the ability to attract all of these different things that create all of these layers that then end up blocking the hair follicle. Please let me know if that makes sense, right? However, on the scalp where there is dense hair, like continuous sebum production, sweat, and styling products, heavy occlusive layers can contribute to residue and buildup around the follicle openings if not regularly cleansed. That buildup makes the scalp environment less optimal, especially in people prone to dandruff or inflammatory scalp conditions. So, when does petroleum actually make sense? Ironically, petroleum is an excellent ingredient, just not necessarily for routine scalp coating. Dermatologists routinely recommend it for cracked skin, wound healing, post procedural protection, eczema, severely dry skin, and protecting compromised skin barriers. In these situations, creating an occlusive barrier is exactly what's needed. So when I say, oh, this is bad or grease is bad, it's not saying, oh, petroleum is bad. And people say, oh, my grandma's been using it for years. Yes, but not in the way that you've been using it. Everything has a certain way that it should be used. And you have to understand, like buildup feeds the scalp's microflora. So with you putting that layer there, just know that you're creating it's a backyard party for everything that's there, right? So, what actually belongs on the scalp? For a healthy scalp without a diagnosed condition, the primary focus should be regular cleansing with an appropriate shampoo to remove excess sebum, sweat, dead skin, and product residue. You should be maintaining the scalp's natural barrier and avoiding unnecessary buildup. If a scalp condition exists, such as dandruff, psoriasis, eczema, or bacterial or fungal infections, treatment should target the specific condition with ingredients that have been shown to work rather than simply coating the scalp with grease, girl, with grease, boy. Those treatments may include antifungal shampoos, anti-inflammatory medications, or other therapies recommended by healthcare professionals. All right. The science leads to balanced conclusions. Petroleum and petroleum are not the same substance. Petroleum is a highly refined derived from petroleum. Petroleum is one of the most effective occlusive agents known. Occlusion reduces water loss. It does not create moisture. And the scalp already has a natural moisturizing system through sebum production. Routine heavy applications of grease can contribute to the buildup and does not replace the biological functions of a healthy scalp. Hair grease makes hair feel softer because it coats the surface, but feeling moisturized and actually being hydrated are not the same thing. And understanding that distinction is the key to making an informed decision about scalp care. So if you want more scientific references from the things that I talked about today, I always love to add and to cite other scientists and other articles just so you don't feel like you have to take my word for it. But that is something that I really, really want us to get to. Give me a 3 in the chat if this makes sense to you, and let me know if you think it still makes sense to add grease to your hair on a regular basis. Let me know in the chat if it makes sense to you, why I'm constantly telling you that it's something that you don't really need, right? These are the things that I really, really want you to understand, because we make things a lot more complicated than they truly need to be. You guys can head over to my website. This is what my website looks like. We have a bunch of new ebooks over there and so many new things for you. So make sure you head over there. You can watch this video. It breaks down, excuse me, like what I'm about, what my website is about. And we have this new portion of my website. Before it was called blog, but now I'm putting all of my studies, not all of them, but I'm going to start putting a wide load of my studies here on my website, and I'm calling it the official Verdant Code pages, right? So you'll be able to click here and read through a couple of them, right? So we'll just go through this one really quick. But before we move on, give me a 2 in the chat and let me know whether or not so far you've been doing good, if we've been doing good so far. And do you have any questions before we move on? I feel the same way about serum on the scalp as I do about anything else. It's literally the same thing. What is your purpose? Why are you putting this, what are you putting serum on your scalp for? That's what I think. What is the reason for you doing it? If you just doing it just because, I'm against it. Nothing goes on the scalp but shampoo unless you're trying to cure an infection. If you're not trying to cure an infection, it's pointless and you're just causing more occlusion. So next up, and thank you guys for sticking around. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up and hype this video. If you're still here, it helps it to get out to more people. A lot of this video, it won't, I don't know if I'm going to leave it up here, but for sure it will be on my new channel. So make sure you check that out over there. I hope that you guys stick around, but yeah, love. I hope I wasn't sounding stank, and you're beautiful. I want you to get out of the habit of putting stuff on your scalp. You don't need to. All you need to be concerned about when it comes to your hair is removing things. You just need to shampoo on a regular basis and add leave-in and a couple of the things that you need and keep it simple. The more you put on your hair, the more complicated it's going to be. So, let's talk about why hair doesn't simply grow, it responds. Okay. For generations, the conversation around hair growth has revolved around a single question: how do I make my hair grow? It's a question that has fueled an industry worth billions of dollars. And every year we have new oils, new serums, supplements, shampoos, and treatments that promise thicker hair, faster growth, and miraculous transformations. Yet, despite the endless product advice, millions of people continue asking the same question, because after trying everything, they still do not understand why their hair has changed in the first place. So let me know in the chat really quick while I drink water if you are a person who can relate to that in any way, shape, or form. Because most people really confused about things. Most of us think that all you have to do is find the perfect hair product and your hair will be okay, but that's simply not true. Okay. So, over the years, I found myself asking a different question though. Not how do I grow hair, but rather what allows a healthy hair follicle to function the way it was designed to. That simple shift completely changed the way that I viewed hair biology. It became the foundation of the Verdant Code. The Verdant Code is my educational framework for understanding the biological environment that supports healthy hair. It is not a medical diagnosis, nor does it claim that every form of hair loss shares the same cause, because that would be ridiculous. Hair loss is complex and can result from genetics, autoimmune disease, hormonal changes, nutritional deficiencies, medications, mechanical stress, aging, or other medical conditions. Instead, the Verdant Code organizes well established principles of hair biology into a framework that encourages people to think beyond hair products alone and consider the health and the environment surrounding their actual hair follicle. Because one thing becomes increasingly clear when we study hair biology: hair follicles don't simply grow, they respond. They respond to oxygen. They respond to nutrients. They respond to hormones. They respond to inflammation. They respond to circulation. And they respond to physical tension. But most importantly, they respond to the environment that is surrounding them. This is why we started this conversation off talking about hair grease and blocking the scalp and follicle occlusion, because these things are so important. The hair is more than what you see with the naked eye, right? And it's so important. If you want, again, to become more familiar with things, which I really recommend that you do, head over to my website. It's completely free and you can study it there. You have no excuse, right? Hair is more than what you see with the naked eye. And most people think of hair as something sitting on top of the scalp, but in reality, the visible strand is only the finished product. This is when the work is done, baby, but the real work happens beneath the skin. Each strand begins inside the hair follicle, a remarkably complex mini organ embedded within the dermis. And while the hair shaft itself is composed of keratinized cells, and is no longer living once it emerges from the skin, those nerves are dead. Otherwise, a haircut would be excruciating pain. The follicle remains one of the body's most metabolically active structures. And this is something that you really have to realize. It's a living structure. It's responding to your movements, your the mechanical actions that you put into your body is responding to all of those things. And inside of this microscopic organ, thousands of biological events occur every second. And you oiling and greasing the butters and the oils and all of that have nothing to do with it. These are specialized matrix cells that divide rapidly to create new hair fibers. The dermal papilla sends growth regulating signals and helps coordinate communication between the surrounding tissues. And tiny capillaries continuously deliver oxygen and nutrients. And again, those stem cells, they store within the follicle to regenerate tissues with each new hair growth cycle. And I'll teach you all about the hair growth cycle. I promise. It seems like I just make random videos, but everything's connected. And then the sebaceous glands, which secrete sebum, helping to protect both the scalp and the hair shaft. The nearby immune cells, which consistently monitor the environment, responding to injury, infection, and inflammation. And every one of these structures depends on communication. Everyone depends on balance. Everyone depends on its environment. And this is why I often say Hair doesn't make decisions, it just responds to the conditions that you set it up for. These are the different parts of the hair follicle that we were just talking about. This is the structure. But most of the time, all you see when you look at the hair shaft or when you think about the hair shaft is, the scalp, right? You are only focused on like the hair shaft. Once the work is done, what you're putting on there, and then what you're putting on the scalp. But this underneath all of this is where things are going down. And this is the part most of you ignore because you just put things on top of it to block the oxygen flow. So all of this is being ignored because there are layers, occlusive layers being stacked on top of each other. So talk to me in the chat. Does that make sense? Does that seem like that's something that will create a healthy environment for the scalp? It doesn't sound like it to me, baby. Okay, not at all. All right. So the hair growth cycle is a biological rhythm. So unlike many tissues in the human body, hair does not grow continuously. Instead, every follicle follows a repeating biological rhythm known as the hair cycle. So during the anagen phase, the follicle enters the active growth phase, right? Where the matrix cells divide rapidly, producing the hair shaft. And for the scalp, this hair phase may last anywhere between 2 and 7 years, largely determined by the maximum length the person's hair can grow and where you're able and how you're able to retain length, right? And then eventually the follicle enters the canogen phase, which is a short transitional period lasted several weeks. And this is where cell division slows down and the follicle begins to shrink. And communication with the dermal papilla, it kind of changes. And next comes the telogen phase. And this is often called the resting phase. Although the hair remains anchored to the scalp, it is no longer actively growing. And finally, the estrogen phase, where the hair is naturally released, making room for the new anagen cycle to begin. So it's a process that's forever going. This process repeats thousands of times throughout a person's lifetime. The challenge begins when the follicle spends less time in anagen and struggles to re-enter the growth phase or produce progressively finer hairs over successful cycles. Understanding the cycle is one of the first steps towards understanding why different forms of hair thinning can develop over time. So when we're talking about the scalp is a living ecosystem. And one of the greatest misconceptions in hair care is treating the scalp as little more than skin. But biologically, it's far more complex than just the skin on your arm. Okay. The scalp functions as a living ecosystem where every follicle exists alongside a blood vessel, a sweat gland, a sebaceous gland, connective tissue, collagen. Listen, these are all things that you need to pay attention to because the nerve endings, the immune cells, and the diverse community of microorganisms collectively are known as the skin's microbiome. So the scalp is a living ecosystem. It's not just as simple as, oh, I'm gonna just slap oils and greases and butters on it. Take a screenshot and look at this right here and let me know in the chat if whether or not this is something that makes you like really think about it. Like, wow, okay, this is what my scalp looks like because underneath all of the oils, underneath all of the butters, underneath everything, this is what's there. So then my question to you is how does you adding oils and butters and grease to the top layer of your skin do anything for the body's ecosystem? How? And I want you to pay attention uh where the collagen and like all of this is. I want you to pay attention to all of these entryways and pathways and then I want you to tell me how you put in oils and greases and butters are helping. Block, you see the sweat glands, everything is needs to exit from the scalp. But if you're oiling and greasing it, you're stopping the natural function of your body and your scalp's ecosystem from doing its job. It's so simple. It's very, very simple. And I know is really hard to hear sometimes, but it's very, very simple. Healthy ecosystem depends on balance, right? Forests flourish because countless organisms work together. Healthy soil supports healthy roots, and healthy roots support healthy trees. The same principle inspired the name Verdant Code. The word verdant means green, flourishing, fertile, and full of life. Nature rarely forces growth. It creates conditions where growth becomes possible. That simple observation changed how I think about hair. So instead of asking, how do I force hair to grow? I now ask, how do I support the healthiest possible environment for the follicle to function the way that it was designed? So everything within the Verdant Code actually begins with this question. And if you want to check a couple of my scientific references and further readings, then make sure you check the link in the description box below. Head over to my blog post because I always have all of that information there. So I'll take a couple of questions and then we're gonna head out of here, okay? Because this is one of the main things that I really wanted us to talk about. We've been making a lot of changes to the website. If you signed up for the 7-day challenge or the growth cycle blueprint and you haven't signed in on the new website, please email me so you can get the code to sign back in. But please don't just email me like, hey, I paid for it. I need to sign in. I need you to email me with some type of proof of payment, a copy of a receipt, something, some type of proof of payment, and then we will send you that link right on over and you can get back in there, right? But this is the Verdant Code and this is the Simple Network. I really, really hope that you head over to my website and check out things that I have for you over there because I've spent a lot of time working on it. But I don't think anybody has any questions. And so thank you guys for sticking around tonight. And until next time, everybody be easy. I want you to make sure that you go ahead and watch this video again because I want you to really be able to take these things to heart, right? I need you to really go look into it. Start it over from the beginning, right? If you came in here late, I want you to start it over from the beginning and go back so you can listen to what I have to say about petroleum. I need you to listen to the conversation that we had about hair grease, and I want you to not listen to me in offense. I want you to listen to really be able to ask yourself the question like, what does my scalp really need? Excuse me. And am I giving my scalp what it really, really needs by oiling, greasing, and buttering my scalp up like a biscuit? Like, is that something that is actually helping me? These are the things that I want you to think about. And most of the time, when you are able to really sit down and really have a real conversation with self, normally it makes it way, way, way easier for you to put things in perspective. It makes it way easier for you to be able to look at things and put them together. Because when you are just throwing paint at the wall, hoping something sticks, right? When you are just constantly looking for product after product and constantly trying things, you're not actually learning anything. You're wasting money and you're just randomly trying stuff and you're just storing up more products under the sink. So, is that what you want to do? Or do you want to take the time to really learn the science of the human body? I really encourage you to just get a notebook out, right? And make sure that you are taking notes on things and really not only taking notes on the things that I'm saying, but seeing in what ways they apply, right? Because if you are a person who feels like you're incomplete without a certain product, there's something wrong. There should never be a time where you feel like if you don't have one specific product, all of your hair is going to fall out. Something's wrong. Okay. So, again, I love you, and I hope that this video helped to help you start to move in the right direction to get some control over the things that you do and the products that you use. Give me a 3 in the chat really quick before we go, if whether or not you got something out of this, if whether or not you learned something that you never learned or that you never knew before, right? Because that's really important to me. I don't just want to be talking to myself. It's really important to me that you guys learn things that you didn't know before, or that you are looking at things in a different way, from a different perspective that you didn't necessarily think to look at them in before, right? So, thank you for sticking around with me tonight, and um I really hope that everybody's going to really sit down and just do a little bit of self-reflection. Like, it's really, really easy. Ooh, everybody's putting 3, and then we got 33 people in here. Ooh. But I just want everybody, ooh, 35. I just want everybody to really be at a place where you can be accountable with yourself, because if you can't be honest with yourself, and if you're always trying to be argumentative and no, I don't think that's how that goes. Forget all of that. Look at what I look in the direction that I told you to go look in, right? Checking out the human scalp, the human body. Really, really pay attention to how God made your body. And then you make your decisions on what products you use based on that, not just what people post online, because that doesn't make sense. The fads and stuff, that shit will forever change, but one thing that will always remain the same is the way that God made your body. There will never be a time where you wake up in the morning and you won't have sebaceous gland covering your whole body except for the palms of your hands, your elbows, your knees, and the soles of your feet. It will never be a day that you wake up and that won't be your reality. That will be that on that forever. That's what it's gonna be. But one day you'll wake up and that product line that was like just on top of the world, people may not like it no more, but it doesn't matter. Your body will still remain the same. So why not focus and put all of your attention on the thing that is never changing? Why not focus and put all of your money to and all of your attention on the thing that you're gonna be stuck with for life, that's never gonna leave, that's never gonna change? That makes sense. It has to make sense. All right. I love y'all. Bye.